Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. Hope you all had a nice break. Good to see you back. Good few of you joining this morning, so just give it another few minutes. Maybe some people are still on annual leave. I noticed this week as well. It's still off school, so I've noticed definitely the traffic a bit quieter in the morning, but back to it on Monday, I expect. So let's give it another minute, let everybody join, and then we'll get on with it. But, thanks everybody for taking the time to join us this morning, and I'll get moving with my presentation and demonstration in a moment. This is being recorded just to make you aware, obviously allowing you to watch back the recording or share it with colleagues should you wish to do so afterwards. So a couple more people still joining there, which is fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Okay, brilliant. So as usual, the lines are muted just to remove background noise. Feel free to put questions into the chat box or into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or top of your screen, depending where it is set up on your own screen. Chat box or Q&A. I'll keep an eye on them during the webinar, but it may be the end by the time I get to answer some of your questions if they come through. But again, just feel free to pop your questions in the chat box. So this webinar series it's a series that runs the first Friday every month, and we kind of pick a different topic every month to cover inside design and construction technology effectively as well, using primarily Autodesk technology, but seeing how that fits into various BIM workflows. And just for those of you that don't know me, my own name is Jonathan Reinhardt. My background is as a chartered architectural technologist, worked in BIM management, and now my day-to-day is BIM implementation and BIM consulting with Diatech as well. I also do a couple of other things in the industry, such as lecturing in Bolton Street or TUD Bolton Street architecture and BIM courses as well. So today's session is actually it's part 2 of model coordination. We covered part 1 on the December 2nd session. So we because model coordination can be quite deep, we thought it best to cover it in 2 sessions as well. So what we're going to do today is going to continue on from where we left off the last day. I'll recap for those of you that maybe need a bit of a refresher from the last session, or those of you that maybe weren't able to attend the last session. I'll cover a bit of a refresher on what we covered in part 1, but this is part 2 of model coordination. Model coordination is a functionality inside Autodesk Construction Cloud, and I will be, after I go through my slides, I will be going into the platform itself, and I'll just briefly show you on screen just to kind of give you context, maybe for those of you that aren't aware of Autodesk Construction Cloud. So Autodesk Construction Cloud is a web-based or web browser accessible comment data environment effectively, and it has lots of different functionalities and features made for design and construction related projects, primarily around BIM models and then site execution, and as well as design stage as well, all sitting in the same environment. So effectively, Autodesk Construction Cloud is accessed in the web browser under acc.autodesk.com. Some of you may have access to it already, depending on the type of licensing subscription you have. But what we're going to cover today effectively is we're going to look at model coordination. And what we're also going to look at slightly is design collaboration. The reason I show those together is because they actually come as part of the same package. So if you have something called BIM Collaborate, you have access to these top 3 modules that you see here, which is docs, design collaboration, and model coordination. And that's what we're going to be going into today. We're going to forget about the rest for the moment. They're slightly different products or slightly different subscriptions, and probably not part of what we're going to cover today, but they do sit under there. So what we'll be moving through today is these kind of top 3 modules, because they all tie in together and they're all under the same subscription. And what I mean by that, if your company or if you've bought a license of what I said, BIM Collaborate or BIM Collaborate Pro, you have docs, you have design collaboration, and you also get model coordination as well. And model coordination is primarily what we'll be focusing on today, but I will be speaking about the workflows on top of design collaboration, which we very briefly touched on the last day, but I'll go into that in more detail purely because they kind of sit hand in hand. If you have access to one, you more than likely have access to the other as well, purely because the subscription gives you access to both as well. So it's important to keep that in mind as well. So I will be showing that in a moment. So again, let's get my slides back up. So again, part 2, what we're going to be looking at is reviewing, managing, and resolving clashes with Revit and model coordination, and more in some deeper into Navisworks as well, which we didn't fully get to the last day as well. So I'll be doing some crossover from the last day, purely because the workflows are quite complementary to each other and are best used alongside each other. So again, just a recap then of what we covered in part 1. We looked at running clash detection with Navisworks and model coordination, and we looked at some of the workflows. We introduced some of the workflows. We didn't get into all of them. We introduced some of the workflows with Navisworks and model coordination. And again, that recap, what we looked at or spoke about was using published models from Revit. We then run automated clash detection in model coordination module. We then use the issues tool in BIM Collaborate to create, manage, and track those issues. So for quality and construction-based coordination review. And we will be looking deeper at that issues plugin in both Revit and in Navisworks again today. We didn't get to touch on it in much detail the last day as well. And then the workflow is that you then append your cloud-hosted model directly into Navisworks to also create, manage, and track issues for quality coordination review. And then you're running your standard Navisworks clash clearance, tolerance, and other rule-based clash tests in Navisworks. And then you're creating issues in Navisworks that save directly back to the cloud model workspace. And then you're saving all those models, all those files to model coordination as an NWF, and automated clash detection then ensures that you're working off the latest model and up-to-date clashes as well. So that's what we introduced the last day. And what we're going to show today is going to be complementary to this as well. It's going to sit at a different stage of where you might run this workflow as well. And the way I kind of fit that in is, you know, every project runs differently. You know, some of you may be architects, some of you may be structural engineers, some of you may be mechanical engineers. You know, there's lots of different disciplines that may use this technology in different ways as well. So while I don't want to come across too general in terms of describing workflows, it may vary depending on, I suppose, your specific role, the type of projects that you in particular work on. You know, what I intend here is that everything is kind of a building or infrastructure project. But your role is going to have, you know, I suppose, different inputs at different stages of the project, depending on the type of project as well. The complexity of the project is obviously going to vary how these workflows run as well. So what I will show you is kind of those master workflows that you can use entirely on your project. And again, you can kind of pick and choose certain steps that you may need to use, or you may not even be required to use some of them. Maybe another lead design consultant is running the project, and they may look after that stage of it as well. So that's what we covered the last day, or introduced the last day in part 1. And then again, the workflow that we spoke about in quite good detail was we last week, or last day, we introduced the model coordination interface. So we just looked at the user interface, so I won't be going back and over that again. Some of the tools and tabs. Then we briefly looked at assigned versus closed clashes, save views, and then manage clashes by creating and tracking issues. So creating non-issues from non-problematic clashes, creating issues from problematic clashes, tracking the issue status. And again, we will be repeating some of this today purely because within Revit, for example, you can also perform that type of, so depending if you're coordination or if you're design stage, you may use the issue at a different particular piece of software, Revit or Navisworks or in the cloud. And then you append cloud host coordination models into Navisworks. Make sure you have obviously the coordination issues plugin installed in Navisworks if you want to use it. And then you can run advanced clash tests on coordination models. Advanced clash tests are your Navisworks tests, your more detailed type of clash tests that Navisworks can do, that model coordination can't do. Navisworks still does a lot of the heavy lifting, and it's still a very important piece of software in the process. Then we can look at running those clearance, or you can run those clearance clash tests on coordination models, and then you can create issues from Navisworks that save to the model, cloud model workspace, and then create issues from Navisworks, access Navisworks issues from model coordination, and then save that out as an NWF file linked to the coordination model to doc. So the NWF file, we didn't get to create that last day, but it is an important way to work with model coordination and with Navisworks is the NWF workflow, purely because you can have your cloud hosted coordination models, and then you can use an NWF file, which brings them all together effectively, or federates them all together. And that's always a live updated Navisworks file effectively as well, using the NWF method as well. So that's kind of a recap on what we introduced last day. And then what we're going to cover today is we're going to look at reviewing, managing and resolving clashes with Revit and model coordination then as well, as part of that same type of workflow, maybe further along in the project stage, or it may even precede the Navisworks stage. You know, if designers are working in Revit, you know, that I suppose on a lot of projects that will become before Navisworks on a lot of projects purely at design stage, maybe before we get to a detailed design stage as well. So that's what we're going to look at today as part of that full workflow. So the overall workflow that we're going to look at then is we're going to look at the issues add-in, reviewing all those issues from the model coordination space. We did cover this the last day, so I'll just briefly show you where it fits in. We're going to review and resolve issues in the 3D model. So again, we'll look at reviewing the issues inside Revit, and then we're going to save a resolution information directly back to the cloud model workspace. So we're going to push back up a model that has a clash resolved on it. We're going to see how that impacts inside our HCC environment. Then the workflow that we're going to look at today, which is a different workflow from the last day, we're going to look at accessing model coordination issues inside Revit. So I assume, you know, if you're using the latest version of Revit, for example, it typically comes installed with the Revit issues add-on. If it doesn't, it's available in the desktop app, by the way, and I'll just point out where that is. Desktop app. If you go into your desktop app, by the way, and if you go into Revit, and if you see your issues plugin, so mine are all installed, so that's why I'm not actually seeing this one here. You should see one, depending on your version of Revit, issues add in for, you know, 21, 22, or 23 Revit. And so that's where you'll find it, by the way, just if you do need to access it from inside there. So reviewing. Okay, so let's go back into my slides. That's where you effectively download the plugin. We can then add folders from the cloud workspace to access issues. We can then review the issues window. So we'll look at that inside Revit. Resolve clashes inside Revit. Edit clashing elements and change issue status. And then syncing the central and publish the latest model. We covered that the last day, but the main thing I want to look at today is that kind of issues plugin and that type of workflow as well. And then the design collaboration, where that fits into it. We didn't look at that the last day. So sharing updated packages, and then looking at reviewing resolved clashes in model coordination and closed resolved clashes as well, by, you know, reviewing updated model issues in the model coordination interface, reviewing the clashing elements and changing the issue status, and then resolving the remaining issues as well. So that's what you're looking at there entirely is your Revit workflow effectively. And then just to kind of reiterate, this is what you're looking at with your Navisworks workflow. So they're the two kind of separate workflows. There are crossovers inherently, as a result of, you know, both pieces of software being used at various different stages of a project. So they're typically your two different types of workflows. You have your Navisworks workflow, and then you have your Revit type workflow as well, using model coordination. Model coordination being the kind of main element within all of these workflows effectively as well. So kind of the learning objectives then from today, you're going to use the issues add-on to review and resolve issues from the model coordination space inside Revit. I've showed you where to download it. I won't show you how to install it. It's very straightforward. We'll learn how to access clash issues from the model coordination module inside Revit, resolve clashes inside Revit and update the issue status, and then review the resolved clashes from the model coordination interface and close the issues related to the resolved clashes as well. And then again, just visually, that's kind of what we're looking to achieve. Install the plugin, show you where to do that, very straightforward. Access the clash issues in Revit. So I know we started to look at this last day, but we didn't get fully into it. So that's what we're going to look at today. I was testing it this morning, so it's all working nice and smoothly. And then we're going to resolve the clashes in Revit, and then we're going to review those resolved clashes in model coordination as well. So just kind of a bit of a brief introduction to the project. Then you know, we're going to have we have a folder structure set up within our environment, and this can be a multidisciplinary folder structure. So depending on your own project, maybe set up something similar. You're going to have a shared folder selected as coordination space. We covered that the last day, and the workflow shown in this a particular webinar or accelerator is valid for manually uploading Revit files, as well as outside the design collaboration workflow as well. But I do want to introduce the design collaboration workflow as part of that as well. So yeah, let's skip that. So accessing the model issues inside Revit, then they were just some videos. I will be showing that live on screen, so hence why I skipped the videos. So accessing the model issue coordination issues inside Revit, I've covered how to download it, adding folders from the cloud workspace, and then reviewing the issues window. That's a very simple workflow. I've already gone through that. And then the issues are created on the model sitting in the discipline team folder, the shared folder, or any other folder effectively. So the issues add-on does not automatically select all of the folders. By the way, that's important to understand. And then you can load issues from additional folders on a need-by-need basis as well. And this is all done within Revit, which we will look at in a moment. The Navisworks issues are by default, they're listed as something called coordination issues. So a coordination issue, this is your categorization of an issue when it's created inside the ACC environment. But when you create one from Navisworks, it automatically creates it as a coordination category. That just comes back to when you're trying to report on issues, for example, which is very important as part of the model coordination workflow, is generating things like reports. You can categorize it by a coordination category, for example. So maybe you have 1,000 issues on a project, and you may only have 100 or 200 coordination issues. So you'll pull a report for those 200 coordination issues as an example, purely based on a category of coordination. So it's important to understand that if you create a Navisworks issue, it by default comes in as a coordination issue. The model coordination issues are by default, they're listed as clash issues as a category. And that's what we're seeing here on the right-hand side. That's the category, if you're familiar with issues. And you can see these two were created in model coordination, and these two were actually created in Navisworks as well, purely because the category says coordination. Now, that's not to say that if you create an issue in your web browser, not in Navisworks, you can still assign it as a coordination category or assign it as a clash category effectively as well. And then clicking on an issue, that opens the 3D view on which the issue was created. And this navigates you to the element on which the issue pin was placed. And then also the element on which the issue pin was placed is selected as well. So as long as you have that issues plugin installed, it will appear up here as an issues tab item within inside your Revit environment. And you'll get these type of push pin. It's kind of like a white outline with a different color inside it, depending on the status of the issue as part of that as well. And that's pinned into elements. And then when you want to resolve the clashes inside Revit, you edit the clashing elements, and you change the issue status, and then you sync to the central, and then you publish the latest model as well. So again, if you're familiar with design collaboration workflows, syncing and publishing are two separate steps that you need to consider as well. We did cover that in different sessions before Christmas, previous with design collaboration specifically. We looked at those type of workflows as well. So I'll just assume that you have a certain understanding of that. If not, you can watch back those previous sessions as well to understand design collaboration. And then once you publish the latest model, you're there sharing updated packages. So what we're looking at here is kind of, it's a model coordination, it's a Revit workflow, and it's a design collaboration workflow. So we're seeing all of these working in tandem as well. So if you're editing the clashing elements, you're doing that inside Revit. If you're syncing to the Cloud Central and publishing the latest model, you're doing that in Revit, but it's pushing it into design collaboration for you as a result of this step. And then you're sharing the updated packages. So the updated packages are done in design collaboration, and we will look at that today as well as part of that particular workflow. And then to resolve those clashes inside Revit, so what you're doing is you're edit clashing elements and then changing the issue status all within inside your Revit environment. So you check the description in the issues window to review the notes about the clash. So perhaps you're a Revit user or designer, you know, whether that's mechanical, electrical, architectural, structural, you're working inside Revit, you've received an issue. So you're able to open up this issue inside your Revit environment, and you're able to see what the comment is. You know, maybe that's being reviewed by another senior designer, senior engineer, or whatever the case is. You can see that message that's been fed back to you, and you're going to read that message and go, okay, well, what do I have to do here? So in this case, it's telling us that we need to move the pipe up by, you know, 10 inches in this case, in this particular screenshot. Then you're going to make those required changes to that selected element, and then you're going to change the issue status in the issue window. So you need to do those both of those steps. You need to make your geometry change based on the comment. So you're going to do that manually within Revit, and then you need to change the issue status in the issues plugin inside Revit. So what we can see here, if we look at this issues plugin, we can see that the status of it is set to open. So the color open is always kind of an orangey yellowy color. And then once that geometry change has been made by yourself or the designer, they then change the issue status in the issues window. So what they'll do is they'll change it from open to in review, and that's going to change the status of that issue into a different color effectively. That means that will also update in the ACC environment. We'll look at that in a moment once we get into the environment. And then at the bottom of the window, you can add comments to actually notify whoever created that issue. So you can feed back to the senior engineer or senior designer or design manager that the changes will be reflected in the next package to share, and then you're going to share that and you're going to submit that. So when you share your next package in design collaboration, those changes are going to be accommodated in that. So that pipe is going to be moved by 10 inches next time. So you need to actually share the package as well. So that's resolving the clashes inside Revit. And then you need to sync back to the Cloud Central. So you've made that change of the geometry, you move the pipe, whatever the case is, or move the wall, move the door. And you then need to change the issue status. You then need to sync to the Cloud Central and publish the updated model. So once you finish editing the geometry, it needs to be synced to the central model. So we do this using design collaboration. So you can only do this if you're a BIM Collaborate Pro user. I must say that. You can only do this if you're a BIM Collaborate Pro user, because if you're a non-pro user, if you're only a BIM Collaborate user, you can't synchronize from inside Revit. That's plain and simple. That's what BIM Collaborate Pro does for you. It allows you to sync from inside Revit as well. It allows you to sync from inside Revit as well. And that's what BIM Collaborate Pro allows us to do effectively. So, and then after syncing, the next step is to publish the latest version of the model. So you're going to publish the latest version of the model. So you've synced it. So that pushes the changes up to the cloud. And there's effectively two cloud models. There's the work shared one, and then there's the published work shared one as well. So then we need to publish that version of the model. So that pipe change is going to be in this now published version of this model. And then after publishing the model, we're going to go into our ACC project via the Chrome window, and we're going to ensure that the latest published file is ready for viewing or sharing, and that no spinning wheels are displayed. That just means that it's not still syncing. And again, this type of workflow, I mean, it does become second nature to you. It's not that it's a lot of unnecessary steps or anything like that. What you'll actually find is you'll probably skip some of these steps purely because you'll know that the latest model has been published. You'll go straight into design collaboration, and that's what we'll see on the next screen. And then you can go into design collaboration modules to share this as a package. So once we share this as a package, it then becomes visible inside the design collaboration module. So that's how the issues plugin fits in with the workflow that we looked at the last day. That model coordination clash detection workflow fits in with the design collaboration workflow by using Revit and by using Navisworks if it fits into your workflow as well, but primarily using model coordination. When you reshare those packages into Autodesk Construction Cloud, they come into design collaboration, and then under your particular swim lane, like these are called swim lanes in design collaboration, architecture team, structural team, mechanical team, electrical and plumbing, etc. We'll then see that a new package has been shared as part of this as well. So that new package that's been shared is that updated geometry. So that pipe in that mechanical model has been moved by 10 inches or by the required dimension that was in the comment as well from the design manager, for example. So then you're going to review, or the design manager is then going to review those resolved clashes in model coordination, and they're going to close the resolved issue. So we're going through this full process right here. So they're going to resolve those clashes in model coordination and close the resolved issues. They're going to review the updated issues in model coordination interface. So the design manager now has received that model. They come into model coordination, they review the clashing elements, and then they change the issue status, and then they resolve the remaining active issues. So they come into their user interface, they can see any of the issues inside model coordination, like we looked at the last day. They can review those resolved clashes in model coordination or even close resolved issues. Once they review the updated status in model coordination, so in model coordination, then they go into models, they ensure that the last check of the clash file, and you remember we looked at this the last day as well, we refreshed it on screen. We ensure that the last check is after the latest model, latest package were published, and then they click on the clashes that are assigned and notice that the statuses of the assigned issues are changed. So for example, the designer will have changed this status, and that will have reflected from Revit directly into the web browser version of what we're looking at here as well. So that's where we can see this change of purple status, which means in review, as we know. And then we're going to click on the answered issue. We can click on the answered issue, and if the element appears in model colors, then the clash is resolved. So if it's turned to that purple color, if the status of the issue is changed, but the clash will have disappeared as well, because that geometry has been changed as well. So the clash will no longer appear inside model coordination, and it will have appeared obviously in the last iteration of this model as well, before that package was effectively shared. So then if we change the status of the issue to closed and then add a comment if we require, so the design manager is now taking this over in model coordination, they will have reviewed it, and they can say, okay, well, the status is set to in review, the designer set it to in review. They can go, okay, well, we're happy that that's resolved. They can read a comment if there is one, and they can even add a comment if they wish to as well. And then if the clashing elements still appear in clash colors, they can change the status of the issue back to open. So that's if it hasn't been adequately addressed, or pipe hasn't been moved for whatever reason, they can still see the clash. Then they can change it back to open as well. So the design manager or BIM manager or BIM coordinator, in fact, depending on the type of project you're working on, the number of design teams and the complexity of that project, it will depend who performs this role as well. But it is, it's a flexible role in terms of it can be assigned to, it could be the lead architect or lead designer on the project that performs this BIM coordination role as well. And you'll probably be familiar with that yourself from various projects as well. So then when we review those resolved clashes in model coordination, we can also resolve any of the remaining active issues as well when we go into Revit. So we can go back into Revit, we can open the model, and we can load issues either from the shared folder or from our work in progress folder. So what you're doing is whenever you're opening a model, you're choosing where you want to load the issues from. Do they sit in the work in progress model folder, or do they sit in the shared folder as well? We can then filter those issues to only display open issues, for example, and then we can make those suggested changes. And again, we're going back through a similar process that we've gone through as well. We're syncing and publishing the model, and then sharing the latest package to update the clashes in model coordination module as well. So we're going back through that similar cycle as well, or another designer may perform this cycle separate to the mechanical designer or mechanical engineer, for example, as well. So just some additional information. And if you want to, so what we've looked at there is kind of that process that you go through to resolve a coordination issue inside Revit, and how you effectively use that plugin as well. And I will be going into that screen. So then, you know, just as an example for external stakeholders, so in certain cases you may need to export issues reports to external, you know, maybe they're a client representative, maybe it's the client themselves, you know, they don't use a piece of design software effectively. You can export those issues to external stakeholders as well. So you can come into your ACC environment or your Autodesk Construction Cloud. If you go into Docs, and if you go into the Issues panel, you will see all of those same issues that were, I suppose, opened in Revit. The status was changed in Revit, but you can pull a report from inside Docs as well. So you can open up a report within Issues, and then you can export that report to either PDF or Excel format as well. You can also automate this reporting as well, that it runs, you know, once a day, once a week, or, you know, every 2 weeks, pulling all of those issues that haven't been resolved, or maybe those issues that are in review, or those issues that have different statuses as well. So the reporting would be quite an important part of this, in my experience, purely because you'll have so many companies working on a project, and they may never use a piece of design software, or they may not use the same software you use, but the reporting is an extremely important way that you're able to communicate. Perhaps there's clashes with their models, for example, as well, and you're able to export those reports, again, like I said, to PDF or Excel, and those reports can be scheduled as well, like I said, and they can be sent out to the responsible parties automatically as well. So if you have a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, structural engineer, you can automate that the report for their relevant issues, so it will be customized to each person or each company, will be sent out at the same time, but it will only pull in their issues. It won't pull in every other issue in the platform, for example, as well. So it will customize it to a bespoke method like that as well. The PDF is the probably most common way to export these reports, but with these reports, they do have live hyperlinks in them. So what I mean by that, if someone downloads this PDF report of all of these issues that have been, you know, maybe captured within the project or within the design stage, or depending on the stage of the project, these clashes, when you create an issue within a project, it automatically takes a screenshot. So it automatically takes this from model coordination. It's showing me all of these pipes, they're clashing with a duct, is what I can see there. Yeah, all these pipes clashing with a duct. The hyperlink in this report is actually this blue text up there. So if a user receives this report, whatever number of pages, if they click on this item, it will actually bring them into the ACC issue inside the web browser as well. So it will show them directly where that is. That means they can investigate the model further, and that means they know exactly where to look for that specific issue as well. So it will do that live hyperlinking. There are certain limitations to the issues add-in. It's good to be aware of them. So it's strongly recommended if you do check out the limitations in the issues add-in. They are constantly updating this. So as you can see, this is Revit 2022, but certain types of restrictions, you know, such as it's only available for Revit 2020, 21 and 22. Only issues created in 3D models will be listed in the issues panel for Autodesk Construction Cloud projects. So there's some minor caveats there to be familiar with. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into the environment itself. I'm going to jump into Revit, and we're going to just look at that plugin in context. So again, here I've a pre-made model. I'm inside Revit 2023 here. I have my issues plugin installed on the right-hand side. So what I'm seeing here are, you know, 3 various issues that fit in this project. I can see they have the push pins are available in the model. So if I rotate around the model, I can see those issues. If I click on this issue, it actually brings me to the issue, which is this push pin down here, and it highlights the object that is associated with. So if I created that issue inside model coordination, for example, and associated with the roof, then when the user or designer opens that model, the push pin is then associated with that particular roof panel as well. And then it's brought me in specifically into issue number 48. It's showing me more information that resides with that as well. and I believe we created this on the last day as well. So again, it's showing me all of this issue detail inside here. It's showing me who it's assigned to, and if I can look at the comment to see what needs to be changed. So it says seamed roof, so maybe there was a wrong spec, for example, on this particular roof. I can then look at this roof and go, okay, well, what's the actual finish on this roof? Maybe it has or hasn't been. Okay, it is a roofing standing seam roof. Therefore, I can go, okay, well, that item as an issue is resolved. It may not necessarily be a clash, but that item is resolved as well. So I can then, from inside here, I can change the status to in review, for example. And again, you can see the color of that changes. And if, for example, if I want to see this issue in my web browser outside of Revit, if I go into open issue, what it's going to do is it's going to bring me into that environment. So it's going to open up the web browser automatically. So it's going to open up the web browser, excuse me, and it's going to bring me into that issue within inside the ACC environment. So what this has done is it's recognized obviously that the status has changed. So if I'm a different user, I'll also see that the status has changed. I can see this model immediately as soon as I come in here. And this is actually part of coordination setup as well. So I could then, if there was a clash with that roof, I could then perform further clash detection from inside here as well. I don't have any other models in this particular one. Other models in this folder. That is why. Yeah, that folder is in a model on start. Yeah, it's on its own, but I can pull in any other model if I want to as well. So again, this has brought me back into that model coordination space. It's brought me into the model that I've been working on inside Revit. I don't have any models linked in. So if I go to manage links, I've no Revit models linked in. It's just a kind of static architectural model in this case. But what I can do in model coordination in this and go, okay, well, I want to clash. I've the particular model, baggage hall architectural model. If I want to pull in another architectural model, I may have structural, for example, I then coordinate on that particular structural element as well. So again, what I'm showing here is that process as a designer. You may be just working on the model, but you can receive those issues. And again, you can perform your clash detection inside the cloud by appending models. It doesn't necessarily have to be a LinkedIn model from inside here. And so let's say the design manager is reviewing this. They're then able to generate a clash based on that particular item. And it's showing me here, we've got two clashes with one other model. If I actually select that item, I can create an issue based on that. I can place an issue based on that. And then what I'm actually going to see, this, maybe it's a design manager or BIM manager that's feeding this back into the Revit user. So if the Revit user actually opens up their issues tab, so what they need to do is just refresh their issues tab. So what we'll see now is we actually see that there's a fourth clash has been added, which is this item. So it kind of hides it from us there, but we can see what I can see here, and I'll just hide that roof just to show you for clarity. So what we can see here is that issue is showing me that it's associated with that particular floor as well. So if I click that item, that same push pin is the one that I just generated inside this environment. So to come on to then design collaboration and where that fits into and what we looked at in the slides. So effectively, let's say, this model needs to be resolved. I can see that this issue is being assigned against me. I can see that automatic screenshot. I can see that screenshot. I can open it up if I really want to. I can open up that screenshot and I can see, okay, well, there's some columns in there. So maybe what I want to do is I want to link in my model. I want to link in my structural model in here. I want to make that change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that in. I'm going to link in that structural model very quickly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make change to that floor. So I'm going to come into my project, into my ACC environment. I'm going to make sure I'm going to project files. Now, what I want to make sure is that I link in. I need to check that I link in the correct structural baggage hall file in the architecture folder. Perfect. So I know that this model is So all I'm doing is just linking in that model purely because, okay, accordance should be okay. So what I want to do is I want to recreate that geometry clash inside Revit as well, because I don't have the model already linked in. You may in certain cases have it linked in, but in this particular instance, you know, you often will unlink models as well. So there we go. We can see that, you know, that model's been linked in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up this floor, for example. I'm going to create very quickly create an opening in that floor. So let's assume that it's going to be an open kind of floor just around those. So I'll do it very simply like so. So effectively, I've resolved that particular clash. There are other clashes, but we'll ignore that for the moment. So now, coming into that design collaboration workflow, effectively what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to update the model inside my model coordination environment. So I'm looking to update that model coordination environment. So again, I'll just come back into this model. So we've an architectural model in here. That floor that I just updated inside Revit, I can go, okay, well, that clash, I can change the status of that clash now and go, okay, well, that one is actually in review. And again, I'm going to recreate what we covered in the slides. I'm going to say, we'll update package now. So I'm press submit on that. So all I've done is just updated the issue. Now what I need to do is I need to sync this model. So I'm going to sync this model effectively. So it's saving it to the central. It's also caching it as a local, just as a backup. So it's only pushing up the changes that occurred. And again, this is a design collaboration workflow. But again, we've incorporated the model coordination. Now what I need to do is I need to publish that model. So if I go to my home screen, I need to publish that latest model. So again, what I'll do is do it from in here. So I'm going to my manage, collaborate, and go to my publish settings. So I want to make sure is that I publish all of my correct 3D views, 3D view, and that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push these now into design collaboration, and then they'll be available for me in design collaboration. So again, we saw the clash, you know, observed inside model coordination. We've seen it being resolved inside Revit now, and we're going to see it being pushed into design collaboration effectively now in a moment as well. So what I'm going to do is open to synchronize again because I've updated my publish settings. Again, just going to come back to my home screen. I'm going to make sure that I go to my correct project. So again, going to that same project, I want to reshare this, and I know it's my architecture package hall arc. So there it is there. So it was modified just now. So that's 6 January 1042. Update available. The update available is the one that I'm going to publish now. So I'm going to publish latest. I'm going to say without links. That's something new that they've added, which is quite useful. That means that it won't pull up the structural file. I don't need to remove it or anything. So I'm going to publish that. And what I'm effectively going to see now is the view online. So if I come into a work in progress, it will just take a moment for it to update. So there's that model is now updating. So in order to make that available to the rest of the design teams, it depends if they're using design collaboration or not. So like I mentioned in the workflows, we looked at the slides. I wanted to introduce the design collaboration workflow. So that model's updating. So if I go into design collaboration, so I'm going to go into design collaboration, and let's say I want to make that model available to the rest of the design teams using using design collaboration, but make sure that it's visible in model coordination as well. So what I'll now see under the architecture team is I'll see a new model appear. So baggage hall, so it's here. So I'll just give it a moment. So what I'm going to make sure is I just want to make sure that that is updated. So what I'm going to do is just going to compare changes. So still syncing effectively in the background. So that model is this this model here is the one that's updating in the background. So let's see in docs again. It's in progress. So again, it's the architecture team. baggage hall. So what I need to do, come back into design collaboration. I just wanted to check that it had fully synced. So what I'm going to see now, my design collaboration, I'm going to come in here as the architectural team for that model. I double clicked on it because what it will do is it will show me my team at the bottom. There we go. So there's the model that I just shared. This is the one that's updated. So effectively, if I actually look inside this model, what I'll see is that the floor inside this model has generated that updated floor opening for those particular columns or whatever's penetrating that floor. So let's say I'm happy to share that model now. There's the one generated on the 6th of 6th of January, which is today. I now want to create that as a package. So I want to create that as a new package. And create that as a new package. I'm going to choose that model. So it's just baggage hall, this one. Save this. So I can also look in here and go, okay, there's the opening in the floor. I'm going to reshare this. So what I'm using here is I'm using design collaboration as part of that model coordination workflow. And what this is going to do is it's going to take the model from the work in progress area and it's going to put it into the shared area as well. So what other design teams now will see, so effectively what the structural engineering team will see is they're going to see that additional model has been shared. So we've got quite a lot of teams in here. So the structural engineering team are now going to see from the architectural team. So I'm just going to make that timeline a little bit smaller. So there's that, there's that package that's being shared by the architects, or that design model with the new opening in the floor. The structural engineer can choose to explore this model if they want. So they can choose to explore this model if they want. They can open up this model and they could even append in their own model if they wanted to as well. So they go, okay, well, I want to append in my own model, and I'm also going to color in different colors. So they can append in their own model. They can hide these elements as well if they really want to look at that floor. But what they can also do before they do that is they can come back into model coordination and they can see if that clash has been resolved. So if it's something really small that's hard to navigate to, or navigate to visually in a 3D model, they can come back into their environment, into their model coordination area. So I'm just going to let this update. So effectively what they'll see here is they'll see the updated model. It may not happen instantly. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes. I know I showed this last day. I'll leave that for the moment. But what they could do is they could open up the same model. A few minutes later, they can open up the two models and they can see if that clash has been resolved. Now, it's not going to show that clash has not yet been resolved, that model has not yet been updated. It just takes a couple of minutes for it to update in the coordination space. So coordination with architecture, this one. It's still updating, but what you'll see is the reduction in the number of clashes will obviously reduce for that as well, which we covered the last day as well. So they could come back in here, but if they were to go into design collaboration after going into model coordination, and like we looked at in the slides, if they then see that the clash has been resolved, the structural engineer then, as part of that design collaboration workflow, are able to go, okay, well, we're happy to accept this architectural model. We'll then consume this model as well. And that's effectively how you use that model coordination workflow alongside Revit, alongside design collaboration, and if you're using BIM Collaborate Pro as well. So I appreciate that there may be certain workflows that some people may not be familiar with in there, such as design collaboration. We have previous webinars that cover that. But what we looked at there again was that model coordination and design collaboration workflow. So using both of these two modules, as well as using the docs module, because all of your files reside in there anyway. So the structural engineer has now accepted that model into their environment effectively. So the structural engineer can look at the design team swim lane And what they can see is there's that model that they've actually consumed. They can have a look at this model again. So what this has done is effectively brought it into the structural engineer's environment. And so again, if I come into the shared folder, into the structural engineers model, structural engineers area, and if they, I'm just waiting for, if I come into the architecture model, what I'll effectively see is the baggage hall architectural model. So that's actually moved from the work in progress area into or copied from the work in progress area into the shared area. So now everybody has access to the shared area because we share that as a package from the design collaboration swim lane effectively. So that's that type of workflow. And again, important to use model coordination as part of that. Now, the Navisworks workflow. So if I just come back into Navisworks for a moment. So if I open up Navisworks, go into append. So go into append. They've updated this visuals. Okay. So what I can do then is I can actually come into my Autodesk drive, into my ACC folder. There's my folder with that project. And I could also append in here. So let's say the structural engineer wanted to then perform a more heavy duty clash in here. So they could open up their own, baggage hall model as part of that. So they could do it that manner. But what we should really be doing is using the coordination plugin. So what this is doing is it's actually taking an isolated model out of your ACC environment, and it slightly removes it. So the better way to get around that is to actually use the coordination plugin. So what I showed was the append workflow there. So let's cancel that for a moment. So the best way to get around that is, and my coordination plugin is not installed. So what that means is that I need to just open up Navisworks 2022. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you that coordination plugin then inside here. So when I log into Navisworks, it asks me which server. If you're on accautodesk.com, that's the US server. If it says autodesk.eu, then you're on the EU server. And I find a lot of Irish and UK based companies are typically on the .com server. It just has a slight bit more compatibility. So then if I come into my Navisworks, I should be able to see my coordination plugin installed here. So if I go to open, it's going to show me that coordination space. And then perhaps as a structural engineer, I can come into that specific project, into that baggage hall project, for example. The structural engineer, I can choose to open up that model that's just been shared. If I wanted to do some heavier type of clash detection, that model coordination won't do for me. I can open up that model effectively, and it's going to open it up from that coordination model. So once it opens the model, it then looks for clashes that sit with that model as well. So again, what I see in here is those same clashes, that same issue that was generated inside ACC model coordination, but I also see other clash or other issues, I should say, and it pulls in the push pins there as well. So I can also see there's that Revit model with the OPE now created in the floor. I'm okay, well, I actually want to append in our structural model, and I want to run further clash detection on that as well. So this is effectively using Navisworks and model coordination. Navisworks will do the heavier lifting for you. Model coordination will do the quick kind of checks for you. So that's a good way to consider it. You certainly won't have one replacing the other. I think they're both quite important workflows as well. So the structural engineer can open up their structural model. Structural model. So what I'm looking for here is the structural. Structural model is not in there. Oh, because it's not in the coordination space. That's why it's in the consumed. There we go. It's in the consumed folder. That's the workflow, a different workflow from work in progress. Then what I can do is I can append in that particular model. Oh, we can see what's happened here is my shared coordination. I should have appended. That's what happened. There you go. And then baggage hall arc. It's that one. And I can append in those two models. I clicked close on those, and then I can perform further clash detection on that as well. So I can still come in here. I can perform, clash detective if I wish to. So I can open up my clash detective. I can choose my various different models if I want to. I can run those two clashes. I can run all those clashes to my heart's content if I want to, and then I can assign issues on top of those clashes if I want to as well. So if I select, the elements to clash, it's going to show me what elements clash in that particular. So we're seeing a column clash with a roof here. So what I can do, if I wish, I can create an issue from inside Navisworks. So I can go create issue. I can place that on top of. So let's say, maybe the column needs to reduce in height. That's what's happening here. So I can place that on top of the column beam. So again, I'm going to place an issue, create an issue inside Navisworks, and this is based on a Navisworks clash rather than a model coordination clash. I'm going to assign this back to one of the designers, whoever's responsible. Structural company, let's say. It automatically takes a screenshot. I'm going to say, please reduce column height. Roof. And again, that cycle continues. So what I'm seeing there is Navisworks being used with the issues plugin. In Navisworks, you can create issues. So what I did was I appended an issue. Revit, I can't create issues. So again, I'll just come back into my model here. So come back into Revit. So let's say I've come in here as a different designer, and what I can do is the same model. So what I want to do is I want to load other issues as well. So what I would then do is I'd make sure I load in all of my issues for those relevant models as well. So we need to make sure. What I'm doing is just loading in the other issues that also sit within those models as well. And then what I should see is I'll see that particular issue that I just created, which is that UV beam. This was the one that was actually created inside Navisworks. It asked me just to load in another model that's appended to it, but it's still showing me that information. It's showing me the screenshot that it took from inside Navisworks and feeding that into Revit. But what it's also doing then, if I go into, if I open the issue in my APC browser, it's going to bring me into my browser environment, and it's going to show me that latest coordination issue that I just generated as well, even though it was created in Navisworks. So it's showing me the model that it's appended to. So it's just showing me the structural model in isolation here. It's showing me that push pin, which is number 158, and again showing me the screenshot. And I can, again, if I require to, I can append in my architectural model if I wish to from inside here as well. I can do the exact same here. I'm going to select, I can append that in as well, and I can review that clash in more detail if I wish to as well. So I can just open that up, and again, I can open up my issues, and then I can just look at that issue in context of the actual model of the architectural roof as part of that as well. Okay, that's effectively it in more detail. Hopefully that was quite useful to you. I do see a question in from Dan. Can Revit identify non-compliance with fire codes or building regs, like it identifies clashes between pipes and structural members? To a certain degree, it can. What I will say is, using a lot of schedules and cross-checking, certain fire codes with schedules is possible. I wouldn't say it's fully extensive in terms of checking all fire codes or building regs. It can do a certain degree, and I would recommend using schedules such as, with clear opening width of doors. If it comes from Part B, for example, you can certainly integrate certain parametric checks inside of Revit as well. It won't be able to do full fire reg checks, but it able to do a certain amount of elements. Clear opening width is one of them. but obviously you'd have to have a certain parameter within your door family to generate that as well. So there is a certain amount of it possible, is what I'll say. It's maybe something we could cover separately as well. So thank you. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Just if there are any questions, I'll stay on for another minute or two. If it's suited anybody else to pop a question in there, but hopefully that was useful to you. And I appreciate your time on this first week of 2023. Okay, thanks everybody for joining, and have a great weekend. Thank you very much.